On, guys, welcome back to another episode of Sloppy Saturdays, and today we are going over a transfer portal update. We're going to talk about how LSU and Oregon has taken similar paths with their quarterback and how they possibly just won this offseason because of the quarterbacks they have now and that they have for the future. But before we get into that, we're also going to talk about two programs that I believe had key transfer pickups as well for their future. Let's get into everything. We all know you guys are waiting for this episode. Everybody wants to hear about how Dan Lanning and Lane Kiffin killed it. But before that, let's talk about Justice Hayes going to Georgia Tech. I think this is a phenomenal pickup for Georgia Tech, and I think it's pretty good for Justice Hayes as well. Justice Hayes last year transferred from Alabama to Michigan. Last year, he was on his way to be in the Heisman race. He was in the Heisman race for the first 6 or 7 games of the season. Justice Hayes had 870 yards last year, and he had 10 touchdowns in 7 games. He was phenomenal. It felt like every time he touched the ball in the beginning of the season, he was gone. He was helping out Bryce Underwood a lot. And now I think he's on a very similar path with Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech has had great running game and trenches over the last 3 years. When we talk about Haynes King being a running back at the quarterback position, then you also talk about Jamal Haynes as well being a great running back. Justice Hayes, I believe, is going to help and elevate this offense. I think next year they're really going to go with Cole Bergeron, 20th ranked quarterback in this year's class, 4-star. Very different from Haynes King. He's more of an accurate pocket passer with touch. But I think to ease him in, a guy like Justice Hayes taking over the load, I think is going to be phenomenal for them. I thought Justice Hayes really could have entered the NFL draft this year because – again, I think he was ready to. I think he's a phenomenal back. But I guess with the injury, he did want to put a little bit more on tape. He joined Georgia Tech, who, again, whip rank key, one of the best coaches in the nation, one of the best running game coaches in the nation. He has the opportunity to fully take over this backfield, which I think he was looking to do, get as much tape for NFL teams as possible. And, again, if you're a third-round NFL back, possibly what Justice Hayes would have been going into this draft class, you're probably getting similar or more money going into NIL right now. So, again, phenomenal pickup for Georgia Tech, phenomenal pickup for him. And I think his time was just basically up at Michigan. Marshall is a guy that's going to be on his toes. He was on his toes last year. And I think he's a guy that's going to take over Michigan's backfield. But Justice Hayes has the ability with the workload he's going to get and his pure talent to be possibly the best running back in the nation next year. I know that sounds crazy, but that is possible to me. We're also going to talk about Notre Dame. Notre Dame brings in 2 Ohio State receivers, 1 5-star receiver in Quincy Porter, another guy that was basically a 5-star receiver right there in Miles Graham. They join a receiving room with Jaden Greathouse, with Malachi Fields, with Jordan Faison, all 3 guys that have been with Notre Dame for a minute. Jaden Greathouse, I believe, is a guy that was instrumental in their national championship run the year before last, and Malachi Fields and Jordan Faison were instrumental in this year's success as well. But bringing in 2 guys from Ohio State that are basically 5-stars is, I think, Notre Dame going in a completely different direction. I think they're going to have one of the best quarterbacks in the nation next year in C.J. Carr. And I really think they want to transform this offense into more of a throwing offense than of a run-first offense. I mean, the last 2 years, they really had no choice. When you look at Jeremiah Love being the best back in the nation last year, and one of the best backs in the nation the year before, along with Jadarian Price, another guy that's an NFL running back. Last year, they eased C.J. Carr into the offense with these 2 backs. Towards the end of the year, we've seen this guy's true potential in C.J. Carr. Now you have a receiver room, 5 receivers deep. And also, I think what's instrumental to this, not only these Ohio State receivers getting their chance at Notre Dame, I talked about how big of a loss Brian Hartline was going to be for this Ohio State program because I believe it was very underrated how much Brian Hartline was able to get all these 5-star receivers on the same field, get them all work, and get them to the NFL in the first 2 rounds. Now, I believe when you look at this offense, you have Jeremiah Smith next year, you have Brandon Inniss next year, and you have Chris Henry Jr., the best receiver, the best recruiting receiver in the country coming over as well. Those are going to be the 3 receivers that get opportunity, and it probably wasn't going to be much more for these 2 receivers, where Brian Hartline was given all these receivers steady paths to the NFL. Getting them all work is something that I think was extremely underrated and something that Ohio State can't guarantee to these receivers. They go to Notre Dame, which I think is a phenomenal move for them. Like I said, CJ Carr is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the nation next year, if not the best quarterback in the nation. And I think Marcus Freeman is really going to transform this offense now to get CJ Carr to the NFL and use CJ Carr to the best of his ability. It's not going to be a run-first offense anymore. He's going to throw the football this year, and I think it's going to be Notre Dame is going to be a true contender. I think these are two pickups again. Them going to one of the best coaches in the nation in Marcus Freeman, a guy that I believe could be the best coach in the nation. And CJ Carr, again, like I said, a phenomenal talent. It's great for both sides. Again, two elite wide receiver prospects they get as freshmen transferring over from Ohio State. CJ Carr is going to be phenomenal. Marcus Freeman is going to transform this offense. Absolutely great pickups. And like I said, again, you're seeing the loss of Brian Hartline not being able to guarantee 5 wide receivers in this room to stay with Ohio State. Again, I told you how big of a loss that was going to be. Now we're going to get into LSU and Oregon. Two very shocking things. We're going to get into LSU first because I have a little bit of a hot take with LSU. Now, everybody knows I wanted Lane Kiffin to stay at Ole Miss. Why did I want Lane Kiffin to stay at Ole Miss? Because I believe it was possible for him to win a national championship with them in the future. I didn't like how everything panned out with Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is not a guy that I'm going to be rooting for by any means. With the theatrics, with, again, him having these timetables for his offensive staff, defensive staff, his assistants, not to stay at Ole Miss. Luckily, everybody pretty much stayed at Ole Miss with their coaching staff, and they took a pretty deep run in the college football playoffs. That's why I believe he could have led this team to a national championship because, again, they were one of the final 4 teams in the college football playoffs. Who knows what it would have been like if he would have stayed there. He goes to LSU, and I'm going to tell you right now, as much as I want to hate on Lane Kiffin, and I'm not going to be rooting for him, I can't hate on him going to LSU because he said when he was choosing between LSU and staying at Ole Miss, and again, Florida's in the mix as well, he was looking at who was going to give him the most NIL and transfer portal opportunities. And when we look at what he's doing at LSU right now, oh my God. Not only does he get the number 1 quarterback in the transfer portal in Sam Leavitt, he also gets a 5-star quarterback from last year's recruiting class, Houston Longstreet, as well. So he has this team being stable at the quarterback position for probably 3 years down the line. When we look at Sam Leavitt, how he recruited Sam Leavitt, you really got to take your hats off for Lane Kiffin because he chased Sam Leavitt. Again, he had him courtside at LSU women's basketball game, I believe. Then he left to go to Knoxville to visit Knoxville, and Lane Kiffin chased him down as well. So he gets the number 1 quarterback in the class in Sam Leavitt. Sam Leavitt, I do believe, truly is, in my opinion, number 1 quarterback in the class as well. Just because, again, not only was he able to go from Kenny Dillingham, a great coach of college football, to now Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr., who I believe is probably, when you look at quarterback and offensive coordinator, the spot for quarterback development. Sam Leavitt did also play in big games as well. He was the Big 12 freshman quarterback of the year at one point. He played in a college football playoff game. He played well. He's a guy that I believe has the ability to make every throw in the field and ability with rushing upside as well to extend plays. Sam Leavitt is phenomenal to me. Again, I thought last year was a little bit rocky for him. Obviously, he was injured, but also his running mate, Jordan Tyson, was injured as well. So, again, when you look at that, I think Sam Leavitt was the guy when you look at everything he could do, his ability to go into the NFL, have NFL upside, but also his experience in college football. Then when you add Houston Longstreet as well, I think Houston Longstreet made the complete right move. Just like I said, when you look at Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr., again, who knows what's going to happen with Charlie Weiss Jr. because he is getting NFL eyes right now. But him sitting 1 year behind an NFL prospect in Sam Leavitt, then he's going to have the ability to take over this LSU offense as well. He's a guy that could do pretty much everything too. A top 5 quarterback recruiting last year. Lane Kiffin gets his quarterback of the now, his quarterback of the future. Not only that, he is making major transfer portal moves around these quarterbacks. He is able to bring in Jace Brown, a guy that's been Kansas State's best receiver for 2 years. Not the most physically imposing receiver, but a guy that could get behind defenses. Eugene Wilson, very similar thing as well. A smaller receiver, but a guy that could get behind defenses from Florida. So he's building an offense around these guys. His running back room is going to be really good as well because Caden Durham entered the transfer portal. Then Lane Kiffin, the guy that he is, was able to bring him back to LSU again. So Caden Durham's going to stay there. Harlem Barry's going to stay there as well. Their running game is going to be good. It's going to be very interesting to see who's going to be the big body receiver for them. But Lane Kiffin is making moves all around, and he has LSU again being a true college football playoff contender next year. He's flipping that roster around. He has his quarterback now, quarterback of the future. And again, like I said, as much as I want to hate on Lane Kiffin, he wanted NIL money, he wanted transfer portal money, and he got all that. Now, before I forget and before we get into Oregon, I want to go into Texas. Texas, again, phenomenal what they've been able to do around Arch Manning. They basically lose their whole running back room in this transfer portal class. But what do? They bring back two. They bring in two of the best running backs in the country. They bring in Raleek Brown from Arizona State. Ironically, we're talking about Sam Levitt out of Arizona State. We can talk about Raleek Brown as well. He goes from Army to Arizona State with Kenny Dillingham. We all know what Kenny Dillingham did for Cam Scatterbo. Raleek Brown was one of the best running backs in the country last year, a running back that was able to run in between tackles. He had over 1,000 yards last year, double-digit touchdowns. Again, even with Sam Levitt being out, I'm using Jeff Sims. He had a great year. And then also to add on with him, they add on Hollywood Smothers as well for this backfield. A guy that reminds me a lot of Darren Sproles, kind of a scat back, a more explosive back. When you get him on the outside, he's able to bring that elite burst. He's also able to bring in receiving upside as well. So you got your running back that's going to be hard-nosed to run in between the tackles, and you got your running back, again, as kind of a receiving back, a running back with more burst upside, all behind Arch Manning in that backfield. It also brings rushing upside. Then you talk about Texas. They bring in Cam Coleman. Wow, Cam Coleman is possibly going to be a top 3 receiver next year. I believe this is a guy that reminds me a lot of George Pickens. His physical gifts are something you just, again, can't buy, you can't match. His ability to have explosive plays, contested catches. This is a guy that has the upside to be the number 1 receiver in the country. I thought he made the complete right move pairing up with Arch Manning, a guy that I think is going to be possibly the number 1 quarterback in the country. And again, more eyes than anybody is going to be on Arch Manning, which, again, you could look at that as more eyes are going to be on Cam Coleman in this spot than any other spot. He could have joined Texas A&M, but I think, again, he would have got work with Texas A&M. He would have been an experienced quarterback in Marcel Reed. But Texas A&M got a lot of receivers. They got Mario Craver. They got Ashton Benton-Roman. They also got Isaiah Horton in this transfer portal cycle. There's a lot of receivers there. I think Cam Coleman wants to be the number 1 guy and wants to have a pathway to be a first-round NFL receiver. And he's going to be that number 1 guy with Arch Manning. There was also other spots as well. Texas Tech could have been a spot. He could have been a number 1 receiver there. He decided not to go there. USC was another spot. I didn't really like USC because I don't know if they're really going to be in contention next year. That's why I also believe Houston Longstreet going from USC to Lane Kiffin, I thought was a great spot because I think USC is kind of falling off the rails. But again, for Cam Coleman, phenomenal move in my opinion, joining Arch Manning. I think that's a great move because, again, more eyes are going to be in him forever. Not only does he join a great quarterback, he joins a program where a ton of eyes are going to be on him, a program that's going to have national championship contention. Cam Coleman, great for Arch Manning, great for himself, phenomenal transfer portal move. Texas is taking over the transfer portal, going all in my opinion, for Arch Manning with the running backs they added, with the receiver they added. Texas is going to be a problem. Hopefully Arch Manning reaches his ceiling next year. We're going to talk about Oregon situation. Oregon has their quarterback for the now as Dante Moore comes back. They also have their quarterback for the future as Dylan Raiola is a part of this QB room now. Dylan Raiola transferred in before Dante Moore really made his decision if he was going to go to the NFL or he was going to come back to school. Dante Moore decides to come back to school. Dylan Raiola is now their QB of the future. Now, I absolutely love this for everybody involved but Dante Moore. I think it was instrumental that Oregon brought back Dante Moore because now they have a phenomenal QB situation. They have a top 5 quarterback last year coming back that, in my opinion, is only going to get better. And it seemed like this whole roster made a commitment pretty much to come back. Obviously, they did have some guys that left, but when you have a tight end like Jamari Johnson that's able to take over the load, when you have Mateo Ugalele saying that he's going to come back, when you have a guy in Evan Stewart saying that he's going to come back, multiple people on this D-line as well coming back. You have freshmen that really stood out in Jordan Davidson, in Ja'Cory Moore, in Jeremiah McClellan. Brandon Finney was one of the best cornerbacks last year as a freshman coming back. This team has a ton of talent and the opportunity to really be a true national championship contender. Now, my thing is with Dante Moore that I said, I did not think he should come back at all. His ultimate goal is to go into the NFL. This was a guy that was projected the number 2 pick, and this was a weak quarterback class going into this year. Now he's going to have to go into a quarterback class next year. I think he's going to be no higher than 3 because this quarterback class next year has guys that people have been waiting on for 2+ years in an Arch Manning, in a Julian Sain. Again, he could be a first rounder next year. We've seen quarterback classes where 5 guys go in the first round, but I think he's taken a lot of risk. Again, we saw a team in Penn State go all in last year, and how did that work out for them? Drew Aller was a guy that could have been a top 5 pick the year prior. Now he's an afterthought in a weak quarterback class. You never know what is going to happen when it comes down to injury, when it comes down to how you play in the next season. Again, I think Dante Moore is going to be great, all things considered, but you never truly know. And in my opinion, Dante Moore isn't the guy with the stock that people have been waiting on for multiple years, where, again, he could just say like an Arch Manning, hey, I'm going to play another year from a development, and he's going to have the same stock next year. I don't think he's guaranteed that. I think he should have gone into the NFL. Now, the opposing side of that is, hey, when we see a Bo Nix, when we see a Jaden Daniels, when we see all these quarterbacks with, again, 30-plus starts under their belt where Dante Moore is 20, they're more prepared for their NFL career as they come into the NFL in year one. But the outside thought to me is, like, again, you're the number 2 overall pick. You can't really go much higher from NFL eyes. And like I said, you aren't this prospect that people have been waiting on. You're more of a prospect that climbed the board. That is not guaranteed into next year. And even if you aren't ready as an NFL quarterback in your first 2 years, if you can play, you can play. We've seen guys like Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield not have the best starts with their first team. They get another opportunity to be a franchise quarterback as well. I would have taken the guaranteed money and the years if I'm Dante Moore. But boy, is it a home run for Oregon. You got your top 5 quarterback last year coming back this year to stabilize this program and only be better. But like I said, the supporting cast around him is also going to be phenomenal. Like I said, with the 2 freshman receivers, and you also had Evan Stewart, a guy that could have came out 2 years ago, coming back as well. The receiving core is going to be great. You have running backs with upside in Jordan Davidson. Who knows how he's going to come off that injury, but he looked phenomenal with the De'Ari Hill. Jamari Johnson, again, is going to be able to be a number 1 tight end in college football. The defense, like I said, the D-line wanted to stay. You're bringing Coy Parrish as well. I completely forgot about that. Dylan Dieneman left, who I believe was the top player for this Oregon program. You're bringing Coy Parrish, who is one of the best transfer portal lads at the safety position with experience that could slide right into his role. Again, Brandon Finney, one of the best cornerbacks in the country as a freshman. He comes back. Like, this Oregon team is going to be fully loaded. For Dante Moore, I just think you're taking on too much risk, but who knows? He could be a first-round quarterback next year and ready to go. I just think, again, if you're the number 2 pick in the NFL draft, you got to take that and run with it. Now we talk about Dylan Raiola. I got to clap it up for Dylan Raiola. Dylan Raiola came into college football with all this Mahomes 2.0 stuff. I believe it was all a joke. I did not like how any of that stuff transpired. He goes to Nebraska with Matt Rule. I think Matt Rule is a great college football coach, but Nebraska for a 5-star isn't the key program you really want to go to. He starts, he gets 2 years on his belt. I thought he was improving last year before he got injured. Now he puts himself in the best possible situation to not only grow up from this Patrick Mahomes 2.0 stuff, but he puts himself in a national championship contending program every year. Not only that, he's able to sit behind a quarterback in Dante Moore, who is an NFL-ready quarterback, learn from him. Not only that, have the ability to learn the system at Oregon for a year. That can hurt as well. And then he'll be ready the year after next to take hold of this program again. Dylan Raiola, a guy with a skill set that's transcended to the NFL, but he has been underwhelming in his first 2 years in college football. And I think it is a huge, huge thing for him to start 2 years in college football and to say, hey, I'm going to sit my 3rd year now to put myself in the best ability to develop as a quarterback. That's phenomenal for him. That's growth for him. Because, again, like I said, when you have a guy like Dante Moore that was in a bad situation at UCLA as a freshman, sits 1 year behind Dylan Gabriel, and then goes, that's one thing. But to be able to start 2 years, be a 5-star guy, and then say, I'm going to sit and now go, I think that's tremendous growth for him. I think it's the best possible opportunity for him. He has 2 years on tape. He sits in an even better program. Now he's going to be fully loaded, developed, and ready to start. And then also for Dylan Raiola, in my opinion, as well, I don't think he was ready to take over this offense. Could he have done it? Possibly, yeah, in an offseason. I don't think he was as far away as Dante Moore was coming in, but I do think he was a little inconsistent to, again, bring this Oregon team to a national championship. I don't know if he would have been ready to do that next year. I think sitting a year can hurt for him. My only question mark with this Oregon team now, again, you talk about Bo Nix going into the NFL. You talk about Dylan Gabriel going into the NFL. And now you talk about Dante Moore again. He could have gone into the NFL this year. He develops. He wants to go into the NFL next year. 3 NFL type quarterbacks. My only question is, are they going to be able to continue to develop quarterbacks without Will Stein? What is it going to look like without Will Stein? Will Stein now being their OC, going to Kentucky, taking that head coaching job. Is it going to be the same style of quarterback development? But for Oregon, you absolutely hit a home run. You have 2 former 5-star quarterbacks, a guy like Dante Moore that you agreed to stay another year, and also Dylan Raiola that you agreed to be a backup. Phenomenal for Oregon. Tremendous growth for Dylan Raiola taking this opportunity. And for Dante Moore, again, you're taking on a lot of risk, but this Oregon team seems to go all in. Oregon has a bright, bright future. When we look at LSU and we look at Oregon, they got their quarterbacks for now. They got their quarterbacks for the future. I believe both of those schools won their offseason. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays. Drop down below your thoughts on all these transfer portal moves. Also, drop down below who you want to see me talk about that has entered the transfer portal, that has maybe joined a new team. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays, and we are